The day I walked into my daughter's new home, I saw another woman sitting in my chair, my coffee mug in her hand, my family photo replaced by hers. When she smiled and said, "We've decided to make a few changes around here," something inside me cracked. My name is Magnolia Pierce, and that was the moment I realized. The house I built from love had become someone else's territory, and my silence was the only thing they needed to take everything that was mine. I thought I was giving my daughter a beginning. I didn't know I was also giving strangers a key to her peace. The day we finished the last room, the air in the villa still smelled of cedar and fresh paint. I'd spent months designing every inch of that house by the river, its glass panels opening to the water, the soft light pooling through white curtains. It was supposed to be a place where love could grow quietly, without struggle, without debt. Delilah stood beside me, barefoot on the new hardwood floor, her hair pulled back in a loose knot. Her eyes shimmered, the way a child's does when she first realizes something beautiful was made just for her. "Mom," she whispered. "I don't deserve this." I smiled. "That's exactly why you do." For a moment, I believed that sentence would stay true forever. Then the front door opened. Grayson walked in first, polite as ever, the kind of Southern man who'd been raised to smile through discomfort. Behind him was his mother, Martha Ward, tall, perfectly pressed, a woman who didn't enter a room so much as she claimed it. Her perfume arrived a second before she did, expensive and suffocating. "Oh, Magnolia," she said, voice syrupy sweet. "Such a lovely property. It'll be perfect for our family gatherings." Our family. 2 words. Soft, harmless. But they slid into the room like a quiet threat. She strolled through the house, fingertips brushing the marble counter, the mantel, the window frames, my choices, my money, my love, and smiled like she was inspecting merchandise. Grayson chuckled under his breath, adjusting his collar. "Mom's already planning Thanksgiving," he said. Delilah laughed awkwardly, cheeks flushed. "She's just excited, Mom." I nodded, though something in my stomach tightened. I could hear my late husband's voice somewhere in the back of my mind. "Be kind, but don't be blind." I told myself I was overreacting. That maybe Martha's tone was simply Southern hospitality wrapped in poor phrasing. But even as I tried to reason it away, I caught her glancing at the deed folder on the table, the one with Delilah's name embossed in gold. Her eyes lingered a second too long. Grayson's father hadn't come. He was feeling under the weather, according to Martha. Her version of polite avoidance, I guessed. Everything about the Wards felt rehearsed, practiced, kindness as performance. Still, I smiled and poured her tea, because that's what good hosts do in Charleston. When they left later that evening, the sun had slipped low, painting the porch in a wash of gold. I walked them to the car, the sound of cicadas rising like static. Martha turned before stepping in, her red nails tapping on the doorframe. "We'll move a few boxes here before the wedding," she said lightly, "just to make things easier." Delilah clapped her hands, delighted. "That's so sweet of you." I didn't answer. My smile stayed, but it no longer reached my eyes. After they drove away, I sat in my car for a while, the engine off, the world dimming around me. In the rearview mirror, I saw Martha again. She'd walked back to the porch, directing a delivery man to unload a stack of boxes. Her hand rested on her hip, the gesture casual, proprietary. The sky behind her was the color of dying fire. That night, as I locked the villa's front gate, I realized I hadn't actually checked whether the key still turned easily in the lock. For the first time, I wondered if I'd built a door wide enough for anyone to walk through, and if, somewhere between love and pride, I'd forgotten to guard it. I didn't know it then. But the few boxes she'd promised to move in were not just furniture. They were the first bricks in a wall that would one day keep my own daughter prisoner. And the house that had once felt like a blessing had already started whispering like a warning. I gave them a home to visit. They turned it into a kingdom to rule. It was supposed to be a simple errand. One morning, I stopped by the villa to drop off the warranty paperwork for the new furniture. The air was bright, heavy with the salt of the river breeze. But when I pulled up to the gate, a U-Haul truck blocked the entrance. I called out for Delilah. No answer. From inside came the thud of hammers, laughter, the scrape of furniture across the floor. Something in me tightened. When I pushed open the door, the house that had once carried my fingerprints looked rearranged. The photo of Delilah and Grayson that used to hang above the mantel was gone. In its place, a large framed print titled "The Ward Family Reunion." The wine cabinet I had chosen myself was missing, replaced with porcelain figurines lined neatly like trophies, and on the sofa, Robert Ward sat in his undershirt, one arm slung across the backrest, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling while his shoes, muddy, heavy, dug into my new rug. Martha turned toward me, cheerful as ever. "Oh, Magnolia, we're just making the place more homely," she said, smiling as though she'd done me a favor. I glanced at Delilah. She stood in the kitchen doorway, tray in her hands, knuckles pale. Her smile looked borrowed. "Mom," she said softly, "they just needed a place to stay before the wedding." I nodded slowly, though my heartbeat had begun to throb in my ears. It wasn't a visit. It was an occupation wrapped in courtesy. Every word, every gesture carried that quiet arrogance I'd only ever seen in people who mistake politeness for permission. When the noise died down for a moment, I said, "Make sure they know it's still yours, sweetheart." Martha's eyes met mine over her teacup. "It's all family, darling," she replied smoothly. "No one keeps score in a real family." Her voice was gentle, but the subtext struck like a slap. I forced a polite laugh, excused myself, and left soon after. But that night, something kept scratching at the back of my mind. The image of Robert's ash falling on my rug, of Martha's hand resting possessively on the banister as she spoke. It all felt wrong, out of habit. I opened the villa's smart lock app to check if the security system was armed. A red message blinked on my phone. "Access denied, unrecognized user." I tried again. Same message. My stomach sank. The locks had been changed, upgraded, probably, with facial recognition. I called Delilah. She answered on the second ring, her voice tired. "Mom, don't worry. Grayson just added new security features. He said it's safer that way." Safer? For whom? I stared at the glowing words on my screen until they blurred. The system I'd installed, the passwords I'd created, had been rewritten by someone else's hand. I was now a stranger to the very walls I'd built. Driving past the house later that night, I slowed near the gate. Through the window, I could see warm light spilling across the living room. Inside, Martha moved easily between the furniture, humming as she fluffed the cushions. Her silhouette, tall, confident, domestic, might have looked comforting to anyone else, but to me, it was the outline of a queen surveying conquered land. I parked across the street for a moment, the hum of the engine filling the silence. That was when I finally understood. Southern politeness wasn't kindness. It was camouflage, and behind it, people like Martha Ward could take anything, your space, your comfort, even your child's sense of belonging, and make it look like grace. The gate glinted in the dark, still unlocked the way I'd left it weeks ago. I realized that was my first mistake, building something so open, so trusting, that anyone could walk through it and claim it as their own. Respect doesn't vanish in one act. It dies slowly, hidden under politeness. A week passed before I went back. The laughter reached me before the door did. The house sounded alive, but not with Delilah's voice. Inside, Martha was hosting an afternoon tea, her pearls catching the light. Grayson and his father were outside in the garage, fixing things, though I doubted either knew a wrench from a hammer. Delilah flitted between kitchen and dining room, carrying trays like staff at a bed and breakfast. I smiled, brittle. "Have you decided when you'll move back to Atlanta?" Martha's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Oh, why rush? We're still settling in. This place feels like home already." Home. Again that word. I watched Delilah serve another plate of scones, her movements small, careful. Every few minutes, Martha corrected her tone or posture. City girls need to learn real hospitality. Later, when the others stepped out, I pulled Delilah aside. "Sweetheart," I said quietly, "don't let them stay too long. This house—" She cut me off, her voice trembling but polite. "Mom, please stop making them feel unwelcome. They're family now." The words hurt more than I expected, not because she meant to wound me, but because she believed it. When Delilah left to run errands, Martha closed the door behind her with the ease of someone who'd been closing doors her whole life. She turned to me, smile poised like a blade. "Since you're a practical woman, I'm sure you understand how paperwork works," she said. "Grayson will handle all the ownership details. That's how men do things." Her tone was calm, almost instructional, like she was explaining a recipe. I didn't respond. I just watched her sip her tea, nails tapping the porcelain. She believed I was the kind of woman who'd rather be polite than right. That evening, I found the file Delilah had left on her desk, bank papers, receipts, a form at the top with her looping signature. The title read, "Joint Title Transfer Request." I ran my fingers over the ink, the handwriting I'd known since she first learned to spell her name. She'd signed it believing it was routine, something for the bank. I didn't get angry. Not yet. Anger was too loud, too visible. Instead, I whispered to the empty room. I built these walls. Now they're using them to keep me out. Outside, the lights of the villa glowed across the water like a reflection of another life, one where trust was a luxury I could still afford. But standing there, holding that paper, I knew the truth. They weren't guests anymore. They were settlers. And this wasn't a homecoming. It was a quiet, polite invasion wearing pearls and a smile. They didn't break into the house. They broke into our silence. The first weekend of June pressed heavy over Charleston, the kind of heat that slows your breath and sharpens your nerves. I drove to the villa expecting to talk about wedding logistics, flowers, maybe furniture arrangements. What I found instead was a crowd. The gates were wide open, and laughter spilled into the street. Across the lawn, a banner flapped lazily in the breeze, "Welcome to the Ward Estate." For a moment, I thought I'd read it wrong. Estate? Music thumped from portable speakers. Strangers filled the patio, holding red cups, plates of ribs and cornbread. Delilah stood behind an outdoor grill, apron tied around her waist, hair stuck to her temple from the smoke. She looked exhausted and beautiful in the way a candle is before it burns out. Grayson stood on the porch, holding a microphone like a small-town politician. "We're finally settling in," he announced. "Mom says this place feels just right for our family." The crowd clapped. Martha beamed, hand pressed to her heart, as if she'd earned this house herself. I froze. The sound blurred. All I could hear was the river behind me and the pounding of my pulse. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and barbecue smoke. The framed wedding photo of Delilah and Grayson, one I'd hung only weeks ago, was gone. In its place hung a black and white portrait of Robert and Martha on their own wedding day. The bar cabinet I had built into the wall now displayed family keepsakes I didn't recognize. Every trace of my daughter had been scrubbed out. "Ma'am, are you with the catering crew?" a woman asked cheerfully, carrying a tray past me. Her accent was Georgia thick. I didn't answer. The question was harmless, but it burned. When I finally found my voice, I asked Martha quietly, "Did you change the pictures?" She laughed. "The sound light is linen." "Oh, it's just temporary decor. Don't be sensitive," Robert added from the couch, beer in hand. "Relax. Magnolia, you gave it as a gift. No strings attached, right?" Delilah stood near the door, twisting a napkin in her hands. I caught her eye, and she looked away. "Do you agree with that?" I asked Grayson. He shrugged, smiling the way men do when they want to avoid conflict. "They're family. Mom, let's not make a scene." Family. The word had become a weapon. Then Robert chuckled, raising his glass. "To the new Ward property," Martha added sweetly. "When the deed's in Grayson's name, it'll make things simpler for taxes." Every syllable fell like a claim staked in my chest. They weren't planning to leave. They were planning to own. I stepped outside to breathe. The sun caught on the water of the Ashley River, the same river that used to calm me. Now it mirrored the house behind me, a fortress overtaken. I whispered, "I built this house for love, and love is what's being looted." As I turned to go, Delilah caught my arm. Her voice trembled. "Mom, please don't ruin this." I kissed her forehead instead of answering. But when I started the car, the windows down, I heard Martha's voice float through the open air. "She'll come around. Soft women always do." I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. That was the moment I realized the woman they thought soft had just hardened beyond repair. When they took her room, I knew they weren't moving in. They were taking over. 3 days passed before I went back. Delilah hadn't answered my calls, and silence has a sound when you're a mother. It echoes. The front door was ajar. Inside, chaos hummed, a baby crying, dishes clattering, the sharp scent of cigarette smoke and grease. Delilah was at the stove, shoulders damp with sweat, stirring a pot while Martha sat at the table like royalty. "Add more salt," Martha said without looking up. "Robert likes it strong." "Yes, ma'am," Delilah murmured, forcing a smile that barely held. I scanned the room, the sense of wrongness thicker than the smoke. "Where's your room?" I asked quietly. Delilah hesitated. "Upstairs." Her voice trailed off. When I climbed the steps, the air grew stifling. In her room, my daughter's room, boxes lined the walls, stuffed with clothes that weren't hers. A child's stuffed animal sat on her pillow. Her space was gone. I came back down, voice steady but shaking underneath. "Whose things are upstairs?" Martha looked up from her plate. "Travis and his wife are staying a while. They needed space for the baby." "You don't mind, do you?" I exhaled through my teeth. "You've turned her home into a boarding house. Don't meddle in married life. Magnolia," she said sharply, then softened her tone, the way venom softens when it kills faster. "You gave them the house. Let them live in peace." Robert chuckled. "You're welcome to visit, but call first." For a second, I couldn't breathe. They'd reduced me to a guest in the house I bought. I pulled Delilah aside. "Come with me," I whispered. "Mom, please stop," she cried quietly. "They'll calm down after the wedding." Her voice was small, tired. The same voice I'd once used when explaining away bruises that weren't mine to defend. I turned to Grayson, who'd just walked in, sleeves rolled up like he'd earned the day. You think love means watching her serve your family? He frowned. It means patience. My mom just has her ways. His words were oil poured on fire. That's when I noticed the stack of documents on the counter, the property tax and insurance forms, with Martha's handwriting across them. We'll handle it now since it's our address, she'd written in a neat cursive. They weren't waiting for ownership. They'd already claimed it. That night, I sat in my own house in darkness, the silence heavier than any argument. Somewhere between the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the wall clock, I heard my late husband's voice echo through memory. Don't let anyone decorate your silence with their noise. I turned on the light, opened my safe, and pulled out a folder. The house deed, the original receipts, every line of proof. If I didn't act now, my quiet would become the inheritance of my shame. When the email came the next morning, I was already awake. Subject: Title Edition Request. Applicant Grayson Ward. He'd filed to add his name to the deed. I called my attorney before finishing my coffee. Put everything on hold, I said evenly. The house is still mine until the taxes transfer. I hung up, the morning sun cutting through the blinds like a blade. They thought they were winning. They had no idea the game had just changed. Some people mistake silence for weakness. They never notice the moment it turns into decision. That Saturday, Charleston burned with heat and salt. I arrived without warning. The door stood open. Delilah served dinner like hired help while Martha presided at the head. Robert's cigarette staining the air, Grayson scrolling through his phone. On the walnut table I'd imported from Italy was a dark burn mark. Who burned this? Robert smirked. It's just a table. You city folks are too precious, Martha added sweetly. Don't upset the bride. She'll have plenty of chores as a real wife. Delilah's smile trembled. Fear had replaced love. Martha poured more wine. A Southern wife cooks for her husband's kin. That's tradition. I set my glass down. Then consider this a new tradition. Everyone out? Robert laughed. Excuse me? You heard me, I said. Out of this house? Now? Grayson rose. You can't. This house is joint property. No, I replied evenly. The taxes are still under my name. Until they transfer. It's mine. Martha paled. Robert muttered. You'll regret this. Regret belongs to the guilty, I said. So yes, you will, Delilah cried. Mom, please. I touched her arm. Love doesn't mean serving those who despise you. Silence fell. Robert cursed and stormed out. You have 10 minutes before I call the sheriff. They left in quiet fury. I turned to Delilah. From now on, you decide who gets to walk through your door. She nodded, tears trembling. One sentence, enough to reclaim everything. They left the house that day, but not quietly. Grayson's post spread fast. My fiancé's mother threw us out of our home. People judged before knowing. Martha cried on local TV, painting me as the cruel matriarch. Delilah lost clients. I stayed silent. Truth doesn't need marketing, I told her. Then came Grayson's email, demanding $50,000 for emotional damages. They want money? I said. Let's give them the law instead. My lawyer uncovered the truth. Grayson had forged Delilah's signature on the deed. Emails proved the plan. Move before ownership transfers. At the press conference, I wore white. This isn't revenge, I said. It's record-keeping. A reporter asked. What would you say to your in-laws now? I smiled. Nothing. Silence humiliates louder than words. By nightfall, the city knew. The Wards lost their story, and my silence, became my justice. They thought they could bury the truth under shame. But the thing about roots is, they grow back up. 3 weeks after the press conference, Charleston buzzed like a hive. Cameras swarmed the courthouse steps as Grayson Ward stood trial for forging property transfer documents. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and perfume, heavy with judgment. Faces that once whispered against me now filled the benches, waiting to see how far the scandal would go. The Wards sat together like a grieving portrait. Martha dabbed her eyes on the witness stand. "We were only trying to secure our son's future," she said softly, voice trembling for sympathy. Robert leaned forward, his tone sharp. "You rich women think you own everyone's life." My lawyer rose, holding up a stack of printed emails. "Move in early." He read aloud. "She won't fight back. She's too polite." The room went silent. Martha's tears froze mid-act. Grayson took the stand next, his jaw tight. "She told me to file the paperwork," he insisted. "It was our joint plan." Delilah stood then, trembling but firm. "No," she said, voice cracking through the hush. "I didn't." She turned to the judge. "I was raised to be kind, not blind. My mother didn't ruin my marriage. She saved my dignity." You could feel the shift, like air before thunder. Martha lowered her head. Grayson's confidence bled out of his eyes. For the first time, they saw me not as an obstacle, but as a wall that would not move. The judge leaned forward. "The court finds the transfer invalid. Evidence of forgery will be referred to criminal investigation." A murmur swept through the gallery. By evening, headlines read, "Mother's one sentence that saved everything." As the reporters crowded near, I took Delilah's hand. "This isn't about winning, sweetheart," I whispered. "It's about ending." She smiled through tears. "You ended it with one word. Mom, enough." And for the first time in months, the silence that followed didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. They tried to own our house. We reclaimed our name. 2 months had passed since the trial. Charleston had already moved on to its next scandal, but I still caught my name whispered now and then, softer now, almost with respect. Grayson lost his job and was sentenced to probation for falsifying legal documents. The Wards packed up quietly and left town, their name fading from the local papers like a stain washed from linen. Delilah came back to stay with me. Her laughter returned slowly, unevenly, like a song she hadn't sung in a long time. She enrolled in evening classes for real estate law, wanting to understand what her signature truly meant, what trust should cost, and how much ignorance can take. One morning, a letter arrived, hand-addressed in Grayson's careful handwriting. I almost threw it away, but opened it anyway. "You destroyed me," it read. "But maybe that's what I needed. If you ever forgive me, tell her I'm sorry." The words were shaky, uneven. I folded the paper neatly and slipped it into the drawer, not out of hatred, but because I no longer felt anything at all. Forgiveness didn't need to be spoken. It was already buried under the peace I'd chosen. For the first time, silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like control. That afternoon, I rewrote the deed to the villa. My pen moved slower this time, deliberate. I signed Delilah's name beside mine, adding a new clause in my own handwriting. This property can never be co-owned without mutual written consent. When I handed it to her, she hesitated. "You still want me to have it?" "Yes," I said. "But this time, you'll know what every signature means." We spent the weekend repainting the villa together. The old beige walls were covered in soft ivory, a new beginning that smelled of paint and lemon oil. The house no longer felt heavy. It breathed again. We took down every photo that had ever included the Wards, and in their place, Delilah hung a single painting, a watercolor she'd done of the Ashley River, calm and glimmering. While she brushed along the baseboards, she asked quietly, "Mom, do you ever regret giving them a chance?" I smiled. Never. I just regret waiting so long to take it back. The afternoon light poured through the windows, golden and clean. Delilah laughed, a full, unguarded sound, flecks of paint on her cheek. For the first time, she looked like herself again, not a wife, not a daughter being told what to do, but a woman reclaiming her own name. I stood back and looked at the freshly painted wall. It was bare and perfect, a blank canvas, ready to hold only what we chose to put on it. The letter in the drawer would yellow someday. The wards would disappear into the background noise of other people's gossip. But the house, our house, stood quiet and whole again, sealed not just with a signature, but with a lesson neither of us would ever forget. Peace didn't come with victory. It came with understanding where the boundaries truly belonged, between love and ownership, kindness and surrender, silence and self-respect. And as the sun set beyond the Ashley River, glowing against the ivory walls, I realized that this, finally, was what freedom looked like. The same river that once mirrored chaos now reflects quiet light. A year had passed. The villa looked as if it had exhaled after a long storm, bright, still, and full of air again. The ivy along the porch had grown back, the paint on the walls soft and unbothered. The house no longer carried the sound of shouting or footsteps that didn't belong. It had finally remembered who it was built for. Delilah was seeing Elliot Moore, the attorney who defended her in court, a kind man, thoughtful in speech, the sort who listened before speaking. I liked him for that reason alone. I didn't interfere. I'd learned that love, like property, must be owned by the person who lives in it. That afternoon, the air carried the smell of river salt and jasmine. The sun fractured across the Ashley River like broken glass made of gold. Delilah walked out onto the porch with 2 cups of tea, steam curling gently between us. She set one beside me and leaned against the railing. "Do you ever regret giving them that house, Mom?" I shook my head. Never. I only regret waiting so long to take it back. She smiled faintly. "And now?" "Now I know," I said, watching the light ripple on the water. Peace isn't a gift. It's what's left when you stop apologizing for your worth. For a long while, we didn't speak. The river moved steadily, unconcerned with what it had once reflected, anger, betrayal, pain. It just flowed forward, unhurried and clean. Delilah reached for my hand, her palm warm, her laughter quiet. Somewhere behind us, the breeze brushed against the newly painted walls, carrying the scent of ivory and lemon, the house, the river, the silence. They all pulsed with the same steady rhythm. There was no music, no celebration, no audience waiting to applaud, just that clear stillness, the kind that arrives only after you've defended everything that matters and lost nothing of yourself in the process. And as the sun sank over Charleston, painting the river gold once more, I realized that peace had never been something to find. It had been waiting here all along, right where I stopped saying sorry for being strong.